Imagine overcoming cancer, also being the dad of a special needs child where you had to make a ton of sacrifices in order to save their life, while also working for one of the biggest HR companies in healthcare. Well, that is some of Ralf Tomandl's story, and also a big reason why he's so passionate about helping leaders live lives that they love and also enjoy their businesses while doing it. He's incredibly passionate about leadership. Ralf has been to hell and back in a variety of ways and also started out at 1-800-DENTIST many, many years ago, and now is one of the kindest, funniest, most inspiring guys that I know inside the dental industry. And he's got a lot of stories to tell. And I like listening to him talk because he's really experienced a lot of life and he's helped a lot of leaders overcome a lot of things. And he's had to deal with his own setbacks, which has helped him become incredibly authentic, humble, and just have a view of life that is very real and very honest and very admirable. And so I really love talking with Ralf because we both resonate a lot with overcoming things, but also our bigger purpose in life, which is helping people experience their potential, whatever that looks like, and getting to know themselves a little bit better, because we both know that once you really get to know yourself and then fall in love with yourself, a lot of life becomes a hell of a lot easier. Please enjoy this episode with Ralf Tomandl, my dear friend and colleague from HR for Health. Ralf, welcome to the Real Talk of Dental. I was really looking forward to our conversation today because you and I just really met for, I think, the first time at Chicago Midwinter this past February. But you have this amazing energy and I'm just really connected with you and you just have this really great presence. And then I learned shortly thereafter that you probably are one of the most crushed on people in the dental space because everybody loves you and everyone knows you as this extraordinary human being and just an all-around cool guy. And the more I've gotten to know you, the more I've really just have so much admiration and respect for you. And you're also just incredibly fun and incredibly real and very down to earth for a company and a line in the dental industry doing HR and compliance and all these other things that is really complex and incredibly stressful. And you just present it in such a way that is palatable for people and you're so committed to it. So anyways, I'm really glad that we're having this time together to connect. And you also, for who you are and your history in the dental industry, you're also incredibly cool and humble and like a yes guy, which is really, really nice. And there's a lot of people out there that just think they're too cool for school these days, and you're not that guy. So mad respect for you. And I'm excited to share a little bit behind the scenes of Ralf on today's episode. So welcome.
Thank you, Brandi. Boy, this is a high bar, right? Like now I have to be funny. I have to be insightful. I have to be honest. Oh Lord, like what have you done to me, right? But let's see that I can actually reach that. But I do want to say, Brandi, yes, likewise, right? Like I think we bumped into each other at the show floor at the CDS and we had an immediate connection over topics that I think we both care about deeply. And then it kind of grew from there. And then you had the opportunity to see me in my element, which is being in front of an audience, speaking and making sure that they get a topic and a subject matter that is really hard and people don't necessarily like, and get them to care about their own business, because that's what I do, right? Like I care about what I do and how our business is, but also I care about their success, which is what I tie to my personality, which I think is what you clued in on. So thank you for saying that. I very much
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
of
you.
course. Yeah, so just a little, how you got here kind of thing. I believe
Yeah,
you started way back when at 1-800-DENTIST. Is that right? Is that your
I
first
did.
foray
Yes,
into
yes,
dental?
yes. Yep. My first foray, it was, I laugh at it today. It was at the time a part-time job, right? Like I was like, I would never do this full time. This is an industry I have zero understanding of and or interest in, only then to be proven wrong, right? And I have to say, I was lucky to have had at every key component or key time or intersection of my life great mentors that allowed me to see the true opportunity, that either gave me the opportunity to succeed or allowed me to slow down enough to learn the importance of the situation and or the part that is about to unfold. So yes, I started at 1-800 Dentist and then was able from there to have a career in many other different businesses, startups, et cetera, to get to where I am today.
Yeah. So now you are the COO of HR for Health, and you've been there now for how long?
7 years, 2019.
Yeah.
So a long time for me. It's like dog years, right? But yes, loved every minute of it. I think that this is one of those businesses that is worth getting up for in the morning, but
Mm.
also is incredibly important for our industry, for people to get right? Like because that's not what they go to school for. That's not what they want to do. But everybody likes to get paid. Everybody likes to be treated properly, and we provide the technology solutions and the protection for both.
Yeah. And one of the things I really picked up from you early on too, I mean, I guess our friendship now is only 4 or 5 months old, but I'm usually a decent judge of character. But one of the things I really picked up on was you have so much depth. And I think that really comes through in a lot of ways. And you also have what I call range, right? So I think that's something that I always really appreciate too, which is you can have, the fun banter and you can be silly and all those things, but you can also be incredibly like serious about, obviously the issues that you handle within HR for Health and just the industry and the bigger picture stuff. But, and kind of before we jumped on, a lot of that comes from experiencing life in all its elements and
Yeah.
all its feelings and all of the things that, gets handed to us. And for me personally, like how I relate to that too is probably even like 10, 15 years ago, I had this guard up, in the sense of needing to look perfect, to, perform, like, which I call now performative leadership. And I really mastered what I call the art of the dual life, where I had this persona that I felt like I needed to always share. And because I hadn't really addressed a lot of my own stuff, and then, life happens, and then you get incredibly humbled and you have that ego death, right? Or just that cracking of the facade. And that was incredibly painful for me. But then on the other side of it, it's like I have so much empathy and compassion and understanding for like where people are at, because I too have been to the depths of a lot of things as well. And having the courage to talk about it, which is what we were chatting about before we started today.
Yeah.
So I know you have some stories, and that comes
Like we
through
all do. Yes.
who you are. And one thing that you shared at the event in Charlotte that we were at too was just your passion for supporting funding for cancer and things like that. And I learned that you too had a cancer diagnosis that you overcame. So would you like to share a little bit about that?
Sure. Like so many people, I don't think a cancer diagnosis ever comes at an opportune moment, because it is one of those moments where life literally pauses, and you have to put everything on hold. And for someone like me who goes 100 miles a minute and cares a lot about what I do, who I do it with, and who I'm with, that was I'm going to say, a defining moment. I think the only thing besides my ability to see the positive in it was I was lucky in as much that my diagnoses and my treatment start coincided with the country shutting down during COVID. So we were kind of forced to slow down, yet our business was busier than ever. But we essentially were all from working from home, and or were reduced to a schedule that is like what you and I are doing right now, right? Like sitting in meetings, sitting at our desk, not having to travel, not having to go anywhere. So I could concentrate on my treatment and work at the same time, which allowed me to stay sane. So I'm one of those people that I cannot. Some people, when they're sick, right, and they need to put themselves through the and identify with the illness in order to get better. I need to be able to focus on something else and have the illness be treated by others. And I'm just a participant in it. Because otherwise I feel sorry for myself. I get impatient. I feel the lack of progress. And that is then detrimental to my own, mental health, but also my own physical health. So like the positive for me was, other than having survived it, was there is a moment of clarity that you receive when you have a deadly diagnosis. Like if you don't do something about this right now, you will die. That gave me a moment of not just clarity, but also a moment of superpower. Where I'm like, oh, I can do this. And whatever you throw at me, what could possibly be worse than me dying? Nothing. And so those are two things, but over time I had to learn those two things. But once I did, I was able to utilize this and use this as a superpower. I did not let it define me. I allowed it to use as a stepping stone for both personal growth but also professional growth. So in the end, I saw it as a positive.
Yeah. What were some of your biggest takeaways, I guess, after experiencing that when you talk about personal and professional
Yeah.
growth?
In full disclosure, when I was first diagnosed, I was very, very concerned that I would be judged
Mm.
negatively and poorly. And it took me quite a while to publicly share both the diagnoses, the treatment. I mean, obviously, my coworkers knew, Ali knew. He, frankly, like after my parents and my wife, he was like the first person I told. And he was extremely supportive in it. But like, so I, like professionally, with my close working partners, I felt supported. But the greater industry, the greater group of people I knew, a network I had, I was like, I'm not sure how people react to this. So I'm always a glasses half full kind of guy. That's who I am. Right? Like this is just my personality. This is what you call as I'm a positive guy. I'm funny. I'm outgoing. I care. Right? Like so that's who I am. But there's just as many people who have a glasses half empty and or a negative connotation with anything that is being thrown at them. And I, for the first time, was exposed to something that I didn't have control over of how they feel. So it took me quite a while to learn to be comfortable with it myself and then be able to take that negativity that I would get back from them and turn it into something positive to show them what's possible, right? Like, so that was probably one of the biggest takeaways for me, which I, like I said earlier, was my personal journey, my personal growth, which was necessary in order to succeed and survive it, right? Like that was really, really important.
Yeah, there is a really big thing I see all the time too in coaching and anywhere else. I mean, just humans in general. There's this chronic fear of what will people think. And depending on, yeah, our programming, it can go towards the negative, right? Where there
Yeah.
is chronic fear of being judged. And because of our species, being pack people and needing other humans, for just general survival, I think there's always that innate fear that we'll be ostracized or abandoned or pushed to the side or something like
Yeah.
that. And something I've noticed just in my own, evolution of what I'm willing to share, and then even some of my colleagues and what they want to speak out about or take stands on, we focus on who is going to judge us and who isn't going to be interested in us, but we don't think about the people we're going to attract.
Right.
There's an old saying, I have no idea where the hell it came from, but I heard it in my early coaching days, which is the fear of loss is 10 times greater than the opportunity for gain. And I think the way the mind is wired, it's like we're more afraid of losing something that we're already familiar with, but the mind and the ego doesn't really know what opportunities are out there because it hasn't experienced it yet. So it can't
Yeah.
make sense of it, right? So you
Yeah.
can't really get too excited about something that you haven't experienced yet, but losing something you already are familiar with is like harder. And that's why people
Yeah.
stay in crappy jobs or crappy relationships or crappy situations because it's like, well, I'm familiar, right? So
It,
I think
it's the devil you know.
yeah, the devil you know versus the devil you don't. Yeah, so I'm sure even with your diagnosis and some of the work you've done now, you've probably attracted a whole community of people that you otherwise wouldn't have, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for sure. Look, and I don't want us to talk about just that, but it
Yeah.
was a defining moment. And I think that to kind of put a bow on it is so two things I want to share. One, while I was going through treatment, a very dear friend of mine and a former colleague of mine was also going through cancer treatment, right? And
Hmm.
our ability to hold hands during that treatment allowed him, so he didn't survive, right? Like, so his diagnosis was just as devastating as mine, but we were able to go through those phases together. And I was able to support him on his final journey, which was really, really important for me emotionally to appreciate what I was able to do and overcome. The second part, and I think that this is what I had to experience is my survival and then sharing allowed others who are not nearly as close as friends and family to take a positive view on potential outcomes, for them to get help, for them to get support, for them to get the necessary perspective that they did not have. Like, they're not alone. There is support out there. There's other people who have gone through this, and so those are the the bookends, right? Like, yes, there's a terrible, sad story, but there's also your ability to empower and help others.
Yeah, yeah, and it's woven into so many parts of you now, which is really, really cool. Hey, I just want to pop in on today's episode and talk to you about this new GPT I wrote called Boundary Boss GPT. And it's for those moments where you've said yes to something and immediately felt that pit in your stomach, or maybe you've now written 5 drafts of an email because you're trying not to sound mean, even though you're exhausted and you swear you've said this thing so many times to the same person, or you're kind of sick and tired of staying late, taking it on, smoothing things over, and wonder why you're the one that's always burning out. A lot of the conversations that I have on this podcast, we often hear about people hitting these walls of burnout and oftentimes not even knowing what to say. So that's why I built Boundary Boss GPT. It's kind of like having me in your pocket when you're about to respond to a text, email, or team issue, and you just don't know what to say because your people pleasing brain is completely hijacking you. This is going to help you have clarity, confidence, and self respect without the guilt, over explaining, or the drama. Go ahead and grab it in the show notes below. It's totally free and you're going to love it. Okay, now back to this awesome conversation. I know also, too, we talked about just even the hardship with your son and things like that. And you and your wife had to make some really tough decisions, it sounds like, in order to save his life, which is
Yep.
really powerful.
Yeah, look, you're really going to who I am today is because of what I went through in that scenario, right? Like, we have a special needs child who has been on death's doorstep several times, and we as parents had to make very, very tough decisions, both life and death decisions that you never want to having to make as a parent. But like, I don't wish that upon my worst enemy. But also economic decisions, from loss of income, career ending moments, to having to sell our home to move somewhere else, to proper care for our child. But again, I have to tell you, I wouldn't want it any different. Like, if I had to do it all over again, like, I 100% would make all these decisions always again. I love where I am with my son today. I think he is thriving because of the environment he has created for himself and how we are able to support him with that. And it has made me personally a much more empathetic person to be able to, for example, be a better leader and understand how people function, right? In order for you to be an effective and a good, positive leader, you have to have experience in order for people to follow, right? Like, a leader is only as good as people's willingness is for them to follow you into whatever is next, right? And so I draw from that professionally, from my personal experience.
Yeah. And I mean, leadership is talked about so much. Obviously, it's a huge part of my work as well. There's so many, and I'd love to just get your take on it too, because there's so many books on leadership and courses and
Yeah.
content. And I'm wondering if it's one of the most written about things in all of business, probably. But, I was speaking with a client earlier today, and they were asking me some questions about how to handle this thing from a leadership perspective. And it really boiled down to also, like, what's your style? Because there wasn't really a wrong way to handle what they were asking about. It wasn't like a really touchy, high risk thing, but it was really what rings true for you, so
Yeah.
many people want this boilerplate, this is how you're a good leader. And then they look at mega companies or something like that, and they try to emulate or mimic that CEO or that founder or
Mhm.
whomever, which there's some inspiration in there for sure. But if it doesn't resonate and it doesn't line up with like who you are and your DNA, then it's not going to be sustainable, right? It's not going to work. And people
Right.
are going to sense that, right? They're going to sense that in your energy that
Totally.
it's not really in alignment with who you are. So, what are some
Yeah.
of the big things you see in leadership, and especially now in this DSO space? I mean, there's the mega DSOs and things like that, but when we're
Hmm.
talking more about like the emerging groups, right? Especially anywhere from like 3 to 20, say, where there's enough, it's small enough where that intimacy can still be there a bit, and the CEOs and the C-suite and the leadership team can still have some touch points. I think that's sort of it's a very tenuous time for a lot of leaders because you're sort of in between, you know, the corporate structure. So
Yeah.
what do you see as far as gaps in leadership?
Yeah, so two things that come to mind when you're asking the question, right? Like one is me
Mhm.
personally, how I work as a leader, right? And so
Yeah.
number one to me is authenticity, right? Like if you live your personal truth, people will believe you. So I really struggled when I first started my career has taken many different paths. And one path was through sales. And because you talked about personas, the number one thing that sales managers, especially when you start out, want you to do is to take on a tough persona, understand the product, and then hammer it home for someone to buy. And that has never worked for me ever as a person. My thing is I needed to find my personal authentic style and who I am, and then build on whatever that is for people to go, oh, I believe you, right? I.e., telling the truth. So how does that translate into what we're talking about in our industry that we're in? I think that just like any tech founder, any dentist that is an entrepreneurially spirited person who wants to grow for whatever their drive is, whatever the spark was that has that growth gene in them, does not necessarily know or understand how complex leadership is. What drives them does not drive the employees that they hire. And it is, I think, and that is the most underrated part of leadership. They believe that if people buy into what they believe, they succeed as leaders. And I think that is a falsity that is cause for a lot of friction in an organization, is cause for a lot of turnover, and ultimately leads to failure. I think when you hire for any position, but especially in more senior leadership positions within your organization, you have to hire for personality and your willingness to have someone who knows who they are. Look, obviously, if you're hiring a CFO, if you're hiring an accountant, yes, they have to have the proper education. That goes without saying.
Right.
But in order for you to succeed, in order for people to have an honest intellectual conversation with one another, they have to connect on a personal level first. And then there is a common bond that leads to it. Like I truly believe that. Like that's how I establish relationships with both my employees, but also with the higher ups, right? Like with a board, with anybody. It is very, very important that they know who I am and that I'm my true self, that I'm honest, that I'm authentic, and that I will give whatever I can. Because the good thing is, I will tell you when I don't know something. The good thing is, I will tell you when I succeed. The good thing is, I will also tell you when we won't succeed and what the problem is. You will always get the truth. And I think that that is really hard for a lot of people to do, that authenticity, right? Like they have this, you said it yourself. They have this Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk persona in mind of saying these are the superstars in business and I have to emulate myself and copy them. You won't be able to because for one, they're truly 1 in 100 million. And
Mhm.
number two, you're not them. You need to find who you are first before you can make other people believe that it's worthy of their time to spend time with you on your business. Like, so that's where I believe this goes and where a lot of people fail is being unauthentic.
Yeah. Preach. Yeah, you are definitely speaking my language because yes, 100%. I'm always telling people, leaders, you can't expect a $20 an hour employee to care about the business the way that you do. There might be maybe one in every 20 or 30 people, you might find that person. And those folks are definitely a rarity. And they're usually looking to elevate themselves as well, too, right? Like if they
Right.
have that entrepreneur bite or bug or leadership or something like that. But yeah, it's really, I love how you framed it in that a lot of leaders are trying to convince their teams to care about the things that they care about. And quite frankly, it's above their pay grade, you know?
And if you're honest with yourself, the one person that you do hire in that $20 position, if you're honest and look back once you have promoted them and they have risen with you in the organization, why is that? And they all say the same thing. We jive on the personality level.
Mhm.
Well, duh. That's exactly what we're saying, right? Like, that
Yeah.
is why, right? Like, it's not that
Yeah.
you are such an amazing person and could convince them of your however, no, it's your personality jived, right?
Yeah.
And you can always, like, especially in sales and or in for anything else that I had to hire for, you can always hire for the either the technology, the learning, the specificity of the role. What you cannot hire for is the personality of that is necessary for your team to succeed or for their team to succeed, right? And that's what you have to identify in an interviewing process, in my mind.
Yeah. And I know there's this thing in dentistry, there's another old timey saying, which is slow to hire, quick to fire, because a lot of times in dentistry, especially dentists become like crazy loyal. Like they're so stubborn in letting
Yeah,
people go. They just hang on to the death. So
yeah,
it's like, hey, if this person doesn't, and sometimes too, like the organization continues to grow and pivot, and somebody who once fit may no longer fit. They're not growing and
yeah,
evolving. And this is funny. Anyone that works with me is going to laugh hearing me say this because I've been on this Ross Perot bender now for like the last year. But I'm sure do you remember when Ross Perot ran for
yeah,
president? I think it was
yeah.
like the 80s, late 80s or something, early 90s. I don't know. But I was a kid and I
92.
was.
He essentially got Clinton elected because he split the
Oh,
vote on the Republican side. So yeah,
okay. You remember the exact
not that I'm
election. That's
history buff, but I'm a history buff. So keep
that's
going.
So you might remember this. I remember he was doing the debates, right? He was up there on the
Hmm.
debate and he was really, because I think he truly was the first businessman to like run for president or something like that.
Yeah.
And
At
everyone
least
else were
getting
like,
traction. Yeah.
yeah, everyone else were like career
Hmm.
politicians. So I just remember he was a little man with these big old ears, whatever. And he was so little and he had this southern accent. And he was on stage. And I remember standing there and I was like way up against the TV because I was always into like the debates and stuff. And he said, just because you know how to run a corner store doesn't mean you know how to run a Walmart. And it like I remember it's blazed into my brain for whatever reason, but this is back when my mom was still alive. And I looked at her, I'm like, Mom, what's a Walmart? Because Walmart hadn't like come to our town yet.
Yeah,
And she
yeah,
goes, I
yeah.
don't know, I think it's a big store. We just had no idea what a
Uh-huh.
Walmart was.
Yeah.
And I say this to all of the people I work with that are in that emerging group space where I'm just like, hey, listen, just because you knew how to run a corner store doesn't mean you know how to run a Walmart. And some of my
Yeah.
folks have now changed it to Target because they don't like Walmart, but it's the same principle. It's like just because you had one really amazing office, right? Because
Yep.
that's always how it starts. You have one really amazing office and you're like, oh, I can do
Yep.
this. And then you get two and you're like, oh, I'm crushing it, you know? And then you go on and you do more and you think, well, I got this. But they're still practicing the same systems and ideas and philosophies and leadership
Yep.
styles that they had running the one or two practices. And I'm like, you know, you got to buckle up here because you're running a Target, you're running a Walmart. Like there's
Yep.
operationally, mentally, leadership wise, it's like a completely different system.
Yep.
And I've noticed that too, where there's team members that are there from when they first had that corner store. And now they've emerged into the Target or Walmart era. And these team members aren't designed for this sort of structure. And they're like, but they were with me in
Yep.
the early days. Well, they're not, you know, and they promote them into leadership positions and things like that, but they're actually not fit for that. They're great at
Yep.
running a really successful corner store kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So look, I think that this is probably one of the most important parts of succeeding in business, being a leader, like what you're honing in on is very, very important. And I think that there's a couple of takeaways that I think are worth mentioning. Number one, it doesn't mean that you are not capable of being the CEO of Walmart. What
Mhm.
it means is that you need to allow yourself to grow, and growing comes through hiring the right people for the right job. I call it for myself, my superpower as a leader is I know what I don't know. Meaning
Mhm.
there's limitations in my knowledge, and I have no ego in replacing and or adding a superhuman that is super awesome in that field, and having them work with me for me is the number one way for you to succeed. I'm an analyst by trade. I know numbers. I love numbers. I understand the complexity of business, but that doesn't mean that I'm a CFO. I am not, right? Like when you get to a certain size of business, you have to have a CFO. Right? I am not clinically trained. If I were to run a DSO today, I would absolutely know that I needed full clinical support with a senior leader that is both full clinically trained, licensed, and has the ability to lead dentists in a way that it is clinically responsible for them to do so. I would never dare say anything or guide them or lead them in a way that I'm not, well, both legally but also educated to do so, right? Like you have to have zero ego around that, because otherwise your company will never succeed. You will be the number one roadblock of your own company's success. Number two, and I think that this is also really, really important for dentist founders and people who are growing. I truly believe if you, as a leader in an organization or the CEO in an organization, if your goal is not to hire people to replace you, you're not hiring correctly.
Mhm.
If you feel that they only can do part of what you do and they don't have the capacity to ever grow past you, you have hired the wrong person. My goal in both promoting people from within and hiring people from the outside has always been, at one point, I will become I will no longer be needed. And that is my personal. Now people go like, are you out of your mind? You're working your way out of a job. Fantastic. You know what that means? I have been doing my job as a leader. I have grown people to a place where they can take the responsibility necessary for the role that they have to fill. How is that a bad thing? That's
Mhm.
that's for me leadership. But people are like, oh my God, I'm afraid that they're gunning for my job. Who cares? That's what the job is. Because the next challenge comes around the corner where these people do not know the answer. And then guess what? We have a right person to both speak truth to power, find a solution. They also will work without ego. And guess what? We either find another person or we solve the problem together, because we have an open exchange of ideas and problem solving. Like I truly believe that, and I live by it, right? So
Yeah, I
that would
agree.
be my answer to your Ross Perot story.
Yeah, RIP Ross Perot. I always say train and develop people to put yourself out of business, you know? Like,
100%.
yeah, because
100%.
a lot
You
of times
shouldn't be
people,
in leadership if that is not what you want. You,
yes,
then
yeah,
you stay, you're like, if I want to be a gardener, then I'm a gardener, right? If I want to be this and I never want to, then that's what you do. If you want to be a single dentist running a practice with 3 employees, God bless you. Do it.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. you will not be successful in running five, God forbid, 25 or 100 locations.
Yeah. And I like what you were saying too with knowing your limitations, because that's something I see as well, where you have people that are successful at maybe a couple things, and then they think because they've had success in this one area that they're a master of everything. And
Totally.
that drives me bananas because
Yeah.
you might be really great at, like, I mean, I don't know, like you're saying, like you're great at being an analyst or something like that. And so you're really good at that, but just because you have success in that area doesn't mean that, you're a master, communicator. I mean, you are great at
Yeah.
communicating. Or, I see a lot of times too that, people are really great at running a business, but they really struggle with being a good partner at home,
Yeah.
right? And they're very confronted by the idea of like, why can't I master this thing? Well, it's like, well, because you need some help, get some help,
Right.
whether it's couples therapy or your own personal therapy or coaching or whatever you need to do to work on how to be in relationship with your partner or spouse, get the
Yeah.
help, right? It's like
Yeah.
people convince themselves that they should be really good at everything because they
Yeah.
were good at like a handful of things. And I don't know, it's kind of this trap where it's like, well, like we talked about sort of that, perception and reputation management and things like that, where it's like, well, God, I suck at being a husband or a wife. I'm just going to hide that under the rug versus like just getting some help for it, admit that you need
Yeah.
some, you know?
So I love this topic because it really taps into who I am and what I really care about. But I'll give you one thing that when you were formulating your thoughts really resonated with me. DSOs that are dentist led are in many ways very much like the US military or the military in general. And I'll explain to you what I mean by this. So one of the things that I love about what I do is I'm constantly curious of how other people do things, how they succeed, why they don't succeed. Like I call it professional curiosity. And if you don't have professional curiosity, you might as well retire or do something different. Um, I have endless unbound interest of what makes other people succeed, why and what they do and how they've done it. And to that end, I've probably read more books about, systems, people and or institutions of how they succeeded, when they stopped succeeding and why they started failing. So here's my way of comparing this. I read a fascinating book about generals in the US military and how they are allowed to fail and how they were allowed to fail, for example, in the Second World War versus how they're no longer allowed to fail today and why that's actually a negative thing. And so dentists are highly trained in one thing. That is being the very best clinician they can be for their best patient outcome. That's why they go to dental school. They are incredibly well equipped to do that. Their entire career to that point has led up for them to both get into dental school, succeed in dental school, get their doctorate, go into practice and have a successful practice. That is a specific vertical linear approach to success, right? The military is exactly the same way, as in you are, until you reach the rank of general, you are vertically integrated into whatever your specialty is. You're either in the army, you're in the Marines, you're in the Navy, you're in the Air Force, and you learn within those vertically integrated specialties. So you are a specialist of what you do. The rank of general, for you to be able to reach that rank, the military requires you to take unbelievable amounts of training and additional schooling, et cetera, for you to become a generalist, i.e. a general. And we don't have that in a DSO. We're just saying, hey, you're good at this one vertical thing. So guess what? Times two, times three, times four. People fail because they haven't been trained. People fail because they have not understood the complexity of what it takes to get out of the chair and motivate another dentist, get out of the chair and motivate another team in another location that is 10 miles away from your current location, to have them work independently and succeed. So that's what I mean by like there's a correlation there. A good military leader has trained their soldiers to independently make decisions and succeed in the face of potential death, right? Like, so obviously the stakes are a lot higher and it's very different, but it is in the core principle, the very same thing. And that is what we don't allow our doctors to do, which is get the training, get the exposure, get the help that they deserve for them to succeed. And that's why I love what I do, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help you succeed in this one vertical that I'm in right now. Right. So that is a long answer to your observation, which I feel has me very passionate, has me driven and wanting them to succeed, and has me, look, this is what you need. Let us help you, right? Like, because you and I can see it, they can't,
Mhm.
right? And
Right.
more importantly, they're being told by their peers, you're sometimes weak if you ask for help. God help me, right? Like, ask for help. This is why I have a summit, right? Ask for
Yeah.
help, network, talk to one another, right? Like, so that's where I feel my passion.
Yeah, I love it. And I agree. There's sort of this narrative that people should have it all figured out. And again, it's like people are so afraid to say that they have no idea what they're doing. And I loved, like, even the event you put together in Charlotte, the leadership lab, which really opened up the door for a lot of people to share their experiences. And it was in this level of intimacy where you could really see people talk about their everyday struggles. And then everyone else started opening up and sharing about their everyday struggles. And
Right.
people felt less alone because there's this insane bar that you should just have it all figured out and master all of it. And
Baloney.
everyone's
No one has.
going at rapid speed. That's the other thing
Hmm.
too. This race to just acquire. And I watch it happen, and it's like you're going at a pretty fast clip and you
Yeah,
don't have even the foundation established. It's not going to get any easier as you do that.
that's
It's
right.
like I used the analogy recently with a client where I'm like, it's like you have two kids and you're about to marry somebody that's coming in with 10 kids, and just because you can handle your two kids, now you're inheriting these other 10 kids that you had no part of raising, and somehow you
Right.
got to match this blended family, and we can all
Great
just imagine,
analogy.
like, good luck with that. So yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, totally. Like, look, totally agree. Like, and I think that what I remind a lot of doctors when I speak to them 101 is that admitting that you're struggling at something doesn't mean that you are not successful. It doesn't mean that you don't know how to succeed. It means that you are honest about a part of your business that you're currently struggling with, and you are willing to work on it to make it better for everybody involved, you yourself included, right?
Yeah.
And I think that those, look, to bring it back to what we're all about and how we met. That is why I have a summit. That is why I love doing our dental leadership summit. That's why I love working for who I'm working for at HR for Health. Right? Like, we're in the people helping business, and I love doing that. Right? And there's other ways to do this too, but that's really what it's all about. Right? Like, is your willingness to acknowledge that you are not a superhuman. You haven't 100% figured it all out. And if you think you have it all figured out today, just wait until tomorrow. Something will break.
I always say, if you think you have it figured out, you don't.
Amen. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Ralph, thank you so much. This is so much fun. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but we do have to wrap
Yeah.
it up.
Same.
So, you're awesome. So many truth bombs and so much wisdom that you shared. And I'm super excited for the Leadership Summit this fall. And I know you have some really cool things in store for everybody this year, too. So they get a glimpse of you on this podcast. I'm sure they're going to be quite intrigued
Yeah.
about what
Yeah.
you're.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. You're incredible. I
Thank you
appreciate
for
you.
having me, Brandi.
You just listened to the real talk of dental. If it hit, if it stung, if it made you feel just a little more human, good. That's the point. This isn't about fixing practices, it's about healing people. And if you're brave enough to show up real in this industry, you're my kind of leader. Subscribe, call in, send your wildest workplace confession. And most importantly, don't clean up for anyone. The mess, that's where the magic lives. We'll see you again on the next episode.